Gentlemen, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Today
Hello,
we
Todd.
have, hey, Baby Groo. We got Baby Groo, Travis Groo on. We also have a special guest today. We have Mike Ross. Mike Ross is running for governor of North Carolina. It's kind of a big deal, Mike.
Hello, Mike.
A little bit, it is. Yeah, Todd. And thanks so much for having me on today, guys.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. So tell us, hey, nobody wakes up one day and says, you know what I think I'll do? I think I'll do something really complicated today. I might go on the path of running for governor. So what led you to that? I mean, it's not like even something local. It's like I'm going to go for governor.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly something I never saw happening. And 2 years ago, if someone told me I'd be here today, I would have laughed at them and called them crazy. But it really all started with some local activism in Gastonia. I saw in my local community, basically, there was a homeless veteran who had a service dog. Some Karen called the police. Police come out there. They escalate to violence. Needless to say, the service dog gets tased, ends up getting hit by a car while this guy was in jail. And it's something that could have been as fixed as with a conversation, a little bit of compassion. So I went to speak to my local city council because WCNC, the news station, submitted a request to get the body cam footage, and a judge denied it. So I went to the city council to just say, hey, take a look at this. And in that time, I met a guy named Pastor Moses Colbert, who runs a local church that feeds and takes care of the homeless in Gastonia. And just seeing the alignment of the two reasons that we were there speaking, we ended up kind of starting a series of rallies. And we ran 9 rallies called the Rallies for Justice and Compassion. Really advocating for the homeless, advocating for private property, advocating for really freedom and liberty for people that are quite often overlooked by society. And around rally number 7, someone who I respect, who's been a party member for a long time, said, Mike, we want you to run for governor. And I kind of just laughed it off, right? And then fast forward to 2 more rallies. And at that point, national attention kind of started showing from this. And the fight was escalating, but we were getting some wins. So the more people asked me, I kind of said, I'll do this. It's not really something I ever saw myself doing, but I'll do it as long as you guys are willing to help. And I'm blessed to have an amazing staff. I couldn't do it without my staff. And I said, if you people believe that I am the messenger and the right person for this job, to bring the message of liberty in this increasingly polarizing environment, I'll do it. And then kind of fast forward, that's really how it happened. And then we had a primary, and, I was a little worried going up against Shannon Bray, who got like 174,000 votes before when he was running for Senate. And, people of North Carolina selected me for this role at this point. So I view it as, now through November, I'm going to do everything in my power to bring a liberty first message that advocates for the people of this great state. Resisting all of the tyranny that's coming from DC and the stuff that the uniparty rams through. And, from now through November, that's what I'm going to do. And if enough North Carolinians check a box next to my name, I'll spend 4 years fighting the state like no governor in the history of this country.
Wow. That's a great story, man. I mean, I wonder, do most people start out that way as well, where there's like some type of cause, something kind of leading them towards, I guess that would make sense, right? Like there's something that happens that they get involved, and it's usually something political that they want some type of change, and then that leads into, well, hey, would you maybe take this position or try to run for this position? Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. So, all right, so here you are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who try to run for these positions as well, especially when you start talking these bigger positions like governor and president, and the amount of money that it takes really to fight the 2 major parties. How do you feel like, because they're running all these campaigns? I mean, are you able to run the equivalent amount of campaigns? Are you able to put the equivalent amount of money behind it? Because it's like anything else. It's like when you market a product, right? And you are the product. So when you market a product, you have to get it in front of people as often as you can so that they go, okay, I've seen this multiple times. Let me check this out. It'd be the same thing as you. I've seen this guy pop up multiple times. Let me check him out. So how's that going for you? Like, explain your campaign and how that compares to the big guys.
Yeah, man, that's been a really interesting challenge to think through, right? Because here's the reality of the situation. I'm a financial, or I was a financial planner. I shut down my company on March 31st. So I guess now I'm unemployed or semi-retired, however you want to look at it. Right.
There you go.
I'm doing okay, and I'm blessed that I can take off, until November. But the reality of the situation is, between the Republican and Democrat, this is possibly going to be the most spent for any gubernatorial race in the country. Okay, they're estimating between 150 to 200 million dollars is going to be spent on this race. Wow. I'm a pretty smart guy. I ran numbers my whole career, and I really quickly came to a realization that to compete in this race with money, playing their game the way that they play, would be a fool's errand, right? I mean, the reality is, even if I raised $10 million to try and run the ad game and compete the way that traditional campaigns compete, the math doesn't make sense. So why would I, a guy who lies in math, logic, and reason, attempt to do that? So it really got my campaign thinking. And honestly, the biggest encouraging thing that I've really been able to take from it is what happened in Argentina, right? Everybody says that these political campaigns for these big races, that it takes all this money, that money's the only thing that determines who the winner is. And Javier Milei didn't spend a penny on advertising, and he's the president of Argentina, running as a no compromise ANCAP. Like, that's the reality that happened on this planet in the very near future. So that's kind of, or in the very recent past. And I think that in the near future, we can tap into that. Things are not as bad in America as they were in Argentina. Like, if we had 100% inflation year over year for like a decade, I think Americans would be chomping at the bit for, small government libertarian ideas, like they were in Argentina. But when we think through kind of the strategy, right, is really leaning into the things that we have control over, right, is timing, the message, the infrastructure. So one of the things that I did early in my campaign was try to travel around to a bunch of different county affiliates and build up support. Because the reality is, anybody who's done work in the Libertarian Party at the national level, the state level, or even the local level, is we have to wear a lot of hats. The game is very much rigged against us. We don't have the endless buckets of money that the Uniparty does, nor the networks. But getting that network is, I think, what really helped me through the primary, right? I was going against somebody with name recognition. I've never run for anything before. And despite that, I won a primary. And I think that a lot of that comes from kind of the grassroots work that my team was behind, right? We visited all these county affiliates, met with the local libertarians and said, hey, go out, talk to your other libertarian friends. And I think that same model is how we're going to try and take this into the general, right? And when I think back to that, I'm 41 years old. Okay, I don't know how old you are, Todd, but when I
48.
Think, 48. Okay, so this is going to probably hit very true to you. How old are you, Groo? 29?
29.
Yeah, young, awesome dad though.
So the reality is, when I think back to the 90s, before we had widespread proliferation of the internet, right? You would think that we have so much more ability to connect ideas and for things to get out there today. But I think back to the 90s, and there were things that, when I was a kid and teenager, like games that were being played by me. I grew up in South Florida, like by my cousins in New York, and by like friends in California. So creating that kind of ground level internet-free virality is something that happened all the time, right? All of the urban legends, all kind of the things that predated memes, that happened without the internet. So when I think through like what a libertarian high-level office means, like president, governor, that's never happened. And I truly believe that most of our wins are going to come at the local levels, town boards. However, as a state-level race, it's my job to elevate our our candidates that are running for those lower offices, but also to try to create that virality. So we've been putting a lot of thought into how do we get that situation where even if the Uniparty says, oh my God, this Mike Ross guy might win, there's nothing, there's no hesitation that thinks if they truly believed that I was going to win, that they'd do everything they could to censor me, shut me down, do anything they could to stop this, because it would be a true threat to their power. And, we already saw when the Uniparty just said, hey, we don't even need warrants to spy on Americans, right? They just passed that with the Freedom Caucus chair of the House being the deciding vote on that. So since we know that happens, it comes down to how do you actually create that same kind of virality? And that's what we're really trying to tap into, is how do you create this environment where regular North Carolinians are talking to their neighbors? I can't reach enough people on a one-on-one basis, even if I was traveling 24 hours a day from now through elections, shaking hands and having one-on-one conversations with people across the state. Not possible. There's just not enough time. But if we can create that situation where everyone in New York is like, or in North Carolina, sorry, I was thinking about my my family up there. If everyone in North Carolina is telling their friends and neighbors, hey, you got to vote for this Mike Ross guy. Here's what he's going to do. Here's how he's different. You don't need the internet for that. You don't need to pay Facebook for that. You don't need to pay the Washington Post who bought out all of, the local.
Yeah.
You don't need to play that money game. So we're really putting a lot of thought into how we tap in on that. We're, of course, leveraging social media. I'm here doing podcasts and interviews as much as possible. And hopefully see, wow, this guy's not a politician. He's just a regular dude who thinks through some things. And I think that that's something that people are really, at least, at a minimum, secretly hoping for, but I think pretty openly hoping for. I think people are sick of the status quo, and it's just going to be a matter of who's able to tap into that and create that virality that can be the first domino falling. Because I think once that starts, I believe this as a libertarian, I've put so much more thought into my positions because I definitely have, minority positions on a lot of things. I put so much more thought into that than the people who have their majority opinions because those are just the mainstream opinions. So I'm more than happy to defend any of those positions. And a lot of times I've seen people who are, very conservative or very progressive. When you sit down and have a conversation with them about how libertarian ideas are going to be better for even things that are important to them, which many people may think are different. I think a lot of times they're not, right? At the end of the day, most of us just want, life, liberty, happiness, prosperity. And the reality is the Uniparty is acting as a counterweight to those things. And I'd rather be a headwind.
Oh, completely agree.
Mikey, I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for you. And you mentioned wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
I'm wearing my awesome dad hat right now. It leads me to my question. How is your family support? Are they supporting this? Because I would, I've seen campaigns pull away from your family time or from your time being a dad. And really that's most important through all of this is that you have your family support and that you are still able to allot enough time to be with your kids. How's that going?
Yeah, well, first off, at the end of the day, I realized that I've already won. Like in life and everything else, I have an amazing, beautiful wife. She's an amazing mother. She's my number one cheerleader, as well as in many cases, the toughest coach, right? So having that support has been instrumental. And if my wife wasn't on board, I would have told, despite the fact that I respect those libertarians, sorry, not on board, right? There was quite a few conversations when that idea was being floated with my family. The reality is I did have to let something I loved go in the form of my company. It did get to the point where I had so many hats where I had to make some decisions. And the reality is there's certain things I'm not going to compromise on, right? I homeschool my son. I'm a homeschool dad. Ever since the COVID era, I kind of got forced into that, right? Where I was sending him to a private school and all of a sudden they're like, hey, we're closing the doors. Here's all the work. You teach him. And I was still paying full tuition, right? So after that kind of few months, I'm like, well, until they're going to have regular school, why the heck am I going to pay for this when I'm just going to be homeschooling? I could just buy the curriculum directly. So that's what we did. And now fast forward, he's really bloomed in homeschool. He's happy and I get a lot of time with him, right? There's so many parents out there that can't say, hey, I start out my day with 4 hours of education with my kid, right? That's to me, that's non-negotiable. So it's been really good. There's been some challenges, outside of that, but I think that running a non-traditional campaign has been helpful, right? Right now, both my mom and my wife's mom have been pretty sick, right? We've had a lot of hospital visits in the past 6 months, in and out of the hospital. Things have been challenging there. I was on my way to a campaign event and my mom had a stroke in October, right? Wow. So there's some challenges that we've kind of come across. But the reality is I've got a loving and supportive family. And I'm blessed that at this point in my life, I made enough good decisions earlier, that I can say, hey, you know what? I can go a year without income and it's not really a big deal. And I can dedicate a year of my time to trying and fighting for the future. Because when I look at things, especially as I get older, right? When I was in my 20s, it's like, how do you advance in your career? How do you grow all these things? And, as I get older, we're almost $35 trillion in debt. And as a math guy, as a financial planner, I don't think the average American or the average North Carolinian has any idea what that means in a tangible manner. But when you think about this, when you really think about what's going on at the federal level, $35 trillion in debt comes out to about $250,000 per taxpayer, keeping in mind that half of American citizens don't pay federal income tax, but it's $250,000 per taxpayer. Now, I would like to think I would like to also think I'm an awesome dad, Travis, but as an awesome dad, I'd like to think that I'm going to equip my son with the skills, the knowledge, the drive that he can one day, grow his ability to sustain himself to a level that he becomes a taxpayer. Either that or the Libertarians will win and there won't be any more taxpayers. But if he is a taxpayer, I look at that, it's like, wow, how fair, moral, or ethical is that to say that this 12-year-old is $250,000 in debt for stuff that was already spent, that he's not even of voting age to be able to consent to, but he's going to be paying it off. His kids are going to be paying it off. His grandkids are going to be paying it off. And that's something that as I get older, hey, do I go the route of just trying to push forward, make a bunch of money that, the state could probably steal? Or do I try to fight for something to actually have a just future, right? A truly moral and just future where we are governed by consent, where we don't have, these corrupt people funneling billions and billions and at this point trillions of dollars to things that are not in the interest of our country, to things that are not in the interest of our people. And at that point, when it becomes a matter of fighting for a future for my kid, I guess it just became a better place for me to focus my talents. Sure. Right. Because that's something there's not, what can I do? Even if I make a bunch of money and give him a big inheritance, he's okay. But what about every other kid? It's not like I'm outraged for it just because my kid is $250,000 in debt. I'm outraged because every kid in this country is $250,000 in debt.
That's a noble cause. And I appreciate you answering that question in full. That's a very noble cause and a noble direction that you're taking. And I appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah, man. Yeah, here's the deal, Mike. You're fighting on a level that I think most people don't fight, right? They don't try to get involved politically. Most don't. So, at what point do you think that the fight politically ceases and we start to become like other countries where we literally start picking up the gun? I mean, there's a movie that just came out. Travis and I went and saw it. I don't know if you've seen it, but Civil War. It's
not yet.
It's a great film. It's a modern take on what would happen if America kind of split, and we're it's very real. We feel it in today's society. So I just wonder if, and I say this with all respect to everyone that's running for political office, because I think that a lot of people get into it, such as yourself, and the goal is to change, right? And I think what happens is people get in and the system wears them down, right? Sure. The system wears them down to where they can't get anything passed that they really want to get passed. And all these big changes that we all really want, I would say a ton of Americans, I would say well over half of Americans, probably 3/4 at least, want the same change, like you had said. We all want the same thing. We all want to live in peace, harmony. We want to raise our families. We want to have enough money in our bank accounts. And we just want to enjoy it, right? We don't want our foods to be poisoned, right? We don't want to be taxed to death. All these things. So at what point do you think that the political system just doesn't work and we end up like another country where we start bearing arms and going after our own government?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. And I get that a lot because there's certainly a lot of that sentiment. And maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I am actually still a believer that it can be done peacefully. And I believe this because of two things, and they're two founding documents to this country. And I think that if we, the people, can radically embrace these two documents and take those to kind of the logical conclusion of what they should mean, we can turn this around and claw back that power without firing a shot. Because I am very much I'm not a pacifist. I'll defend myself, my family, but I am not a believer in aggression. I think that words, dialogue, working together negotiation is a much better way to solve problems than violence. Truly, to my core, believe that. But the idea really comes down to the Declaration of Independence and the 10th Amendment. And if you look at those two documents side by side, pull up the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and actually listen to what the founders were saying. Really listen to what they were saying and look at it through the lens of plain English, right? Not all of this stuff where the lawyers try to argue this and make it complicated, like the Second Amendment. Stop trying to dance around. Like, really look at these documents. And what it tells you is that essentially we, the people, have the power to do whatever we want with our government, that our government works for us, that it is something designed to give us a more cohesive, free, just, prosperous society. And then you look to the 10th Amendment, and the 10th Amendment makes it very clear. And I think the 10th Amendment is really the root solution to a lot of our problems. But the 10th Amendment basically says that the federal government has the powers explained in the Constitution. Anything that is not granted to the federal government by the Constitution lies to the state, or more respectively, to the people. Well, when you look through that, I think the ultimate way that you can use this as a peaceful, kind of nonviolent, decentralized revolution is to look through how do you take over 1,000 town commissions across this country, right? Because now you have little towns, 5,000, 10,000 people, where you get an entire board who's willing to test the boundaries of the 10th Amendment. Now, if it's just one municipality, the federal government can come swarming down on them with lawyers or even troops if needed. But if 1,000 municipalities all decide at once, hey, you know what? You know that federal nonsense that's going on that nobody in our community wants, that's screwing us over? Yeah, we're just going to say no. We're going to tell our law enforcement, don't work with the feds. We're going to tell them, hey, if you're going to keep spying on Americans without a warrant, we're not going to assist. Because when you look at the power of the federal government to enforce literally anything, they rely very much on the state and local law enforcement. They rely on state and local government for the for the legal system. And if you can get enough momentum where local town boards say, we have had enough. What you are doing in DC is immoral and reprehensible, and we do not care. We are going to say, step away from it. If it's one municipality, the federal government will crush that. But what would happen if 10,000 municipalities, right, all at once said, we're going to ban the IRS from entering our community. Feel free to invest in your community with your new savings, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of thing. If one municipality does that,
sure,
they're done. But what would happen if 10,000 municipalities do that? I'll tell you what would happen. 10,000 municipalities would now have people who are not paying federal income tax, and the federal government would get choked off and starve of the money that they steal from us. And maybe they'd have to actually think through, hey, what are our priorities? What happens if we can't print, if we can't steal this money? Maybe we have to get back to small, common sense governance that deals with some of the basics, defense infrastructure, and not sending, $100 billion of our dollars at a single time to foreign countries that, up until a decade ago, we were calling some of the most corrupt countries on planet Earth, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's what you're talking about there. You're talking about, that almost sounds radical. That does sound radical, right?
I am radical. I never said I wasn't radical.
Cool. Yeah. I'm totally down. I'm totally down. I'm not going to lie. I'm one of those that sometimes a little bit different than you, where I just say, maybe we need to burn it down. Maybe we need to burn it down and start over. But what you're saying right there, what I mean by that is what you're saying. Right?
Yeah, I'm saying burn it down metaphorically as opposed to physically. Yeah,
exactly. And that's my whole point too. Whenever I say that.
Oh, yeah, you're freezing up. That's okay.
Hold on a second. Can you hear my audio?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, so I may have to switch this thing to just audio only. Let me see if I can't get my camera back. It is going.
See what happens? The birds aren't real, and the CIA just shut you down, Todd.
Shut me down.
I talked about municipalities, banning the IRS from entering. They've already shut this down, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's SWAT teams around all of our houses at this moment.
I know.
This happened last time we got into a controversial discussion.
It did, man. All right, so let me.
I'm telling you, dude.
Let me complete my thought here. So my thought was, what you're talking about, Mike, is exactly what happened in that film, right? So in the film, basically, you had all these other states that, they don't really go into it, but I could see what you're saying being a part of it, where they go, listen, we're not going to do it anymore. We're not playing by your federal rules anymore. We're out. We're out. So all of a sudden, I think it was like 16 or 19 states are out. So what happened was the federal government and the president then decide, no, you're not, and we're going to take you by force. So then you have these Western Front forces, Texas and California join together, and then they fight the federal government because the federal government came after them first. So I could see, I see what you're saying, and I think, yeah, I'm with you. But then all of a sudden, I could see how the federal government would be like, oh, no. You just took billions and billions and billions away from us. We're getting that back.
So granted, I didn't see the movie, right? And I don't know, how they were divided, right? Was it like states? When you think through, the Civil War, it was pretty geographic split, right? North versus South. When you think of how, at least how I envision it, and looking at the makeup of the country, I think that it would be really, truly decentralized, right? It wouldn't be like, hey, these 5 states are doing it and the other 45 states are not. I really think it would be one of those things that, you start with one, a small local board that just, tests the limits of nullification on something simple, right? Like something like cannabis. Hey, we're just not going to enforce cannabis law in our state or our county or our town, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't jump straight to the more extreme, hey, we're going to ban the IRS from entering if you don't stop spying on us without a warrant kind of thing, right? Those are kind of the taking it to the extreme. But when you have 10,000 municipalities spread throughout the country, I really think it would be in all 50 states at that point. And I think that, maybe that offers some degree of protection, and maybe it doesn't, right? It's hard to say when you look at, what the federal government has done. It's not like we have an aversion as a country to killing people, right? I mean, we've certainly done enough of it, right? Over the course of the last 100 years in this country, our federal government. So maybe they would kill Americans. I don't know. I'd like to think that if it's done slowly, that maybe that would offer some safeguard. And, I would like to hope that, whoever is running the federal government at that time would not just,
Yeah. And I appreciate your take on this because, I'm also a very peaceful person that believes in diplomacy rather than violence. But, we have gotten to the point where the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights doesn't mean anything to people anymore.
Certainly not the government.
Doesn't mean anything to the federal government.
Yeah.
They brushed that under the rug years ago, and we've allowed it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. Is we've
in many cases we asked for it.
We asked for it. We
That's
voted.
the sad thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We voted for it, and we keep voting for it. So, when they say America will implode from within, this is how it's happening. It's happening through our voting system and through our media blitz and through just ignorance, really, of kicking the Constitution under the rug and kicking the Bill of Rights to the side, kicking the 10th Amendment to the side. And, it's almost not valuable to people anymore because we're in a state where, although I like what you're saying, it's very, very difficult to negotiate with tyrants at this point. Like it very much is.
Yeah.
So what's the solution then? I mean, if I give up kind of the hope and optimism that we can do it peacefully, and that leaves.
I'm optimistic too. I'm just, I guess I'm playing devil's advocate here.
I mean, I know what my plan would be, right? Like I have no interest in fighting a war,
right?
Especially not a war here in the country that I love, with some tyrants who put over that. So,
we're not fighting a physical war right now. We're fighing literally
it's an ideological
war right now. A war of differences, a war of opinion, a war of Constitution versus non-Constitution ideas, and that's the war we're fighting right now. It's more.
And I'm all in for that war, man. But when it comes to shots, that's the beautiful thing about 2024 is I can get the heck out of here, right? I can take my family and take everything, and thanks to.
You would think so, you would hope so, until they stop you.
Yeah, well, thankfully, thanks to Bitcoin, I'm able to do it really easily. Put it essentially on a thumb drive and take my whole net worth with me behind a key that's in my head, and there's. if it came to that, where an actual outbreak of violent war in our country, I'd probably, at this point, I'd probably try to go to Argentina and follow that libertarian experiment, where at least 56% of the population there doesn't think, I'm crazy for my ideas, and try to build up that society. To
Puerto Rico sounds real nice about now too.
Well, that's part of the United States, man. I'm Puerto Rican, and I'm not going to flee to Puerto Rico if war breaks out in America.
Yeah.
We got bases down there.
I don't advocate for war at all. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just.
Well, in the context of the movie, right? That's a theory that's something that in theory could happen.
What's interesting though is it is a theory, right? And you watch the movie, but what's crazy is it's happened here before. It's happened here before, right? The original Civil War.
Yeah.
What's also fascinating is in history, we can look at every great superpower throughout recorded history. And it always ends like this, right?
Yeah.
They take over. They're the most powerful nation on the planet. And then they have so much abundance, right? And that's us. And that's one of my biggest arguments here nowadays is we have so much abundance that our arguments are over, are you a boy or a girl? What are you? Like, that's our arguments, right? No, other people in the world right now are still arguing over food and clean water and all these other things.
Yeah.
So in history, it's always shown us that these nations get so big, then they start to turn on each other. And then when they turn on each other, they start to turn on beliefs and the political system, and then it all crumbles from within, and it has to be rebuilt. I would love to be optimistic. I think what you're saying is 100% true. I think that's how it would do. We have to change the mindset of Americans to go, hey guys, which one do you want? Here's your two choices. You have two choices. It can all implode, and we could all, the comfort that you have, the food that you can go down to the store and get, the clean water that you have, it can all erode, and then we can start to rebuild it, and it's going to take forever. But in the meantime, there's probably going to be other countries that invade us and take over certain sections of America. Or we can all start thinking differently and get on the same page and say, F the government. Which one would you like to do? And it seems for some reason people's minds don't go that far to think of how crazy it could be because they've never had to experience it. Because here, it's all nice, man. If I live in a nice area, like I don't really experience crime. Like, everything's good.
Well, think of how much we've been propagandized as a society too. Like over the last 100 years, right? So you rewind 100 years, right? You're looking at the ramping up of the 20s, right? Headed for the Great Depression that's coming up, but at that point we're only like a decade after the creation of the Federal Reserve. And at that point, government spending, like total government spending, federal, like all of the government spending as a percentage of GDP was under 10%. Okay. So, I mean, that's the reality. And since then, we have moved. And I think that part of it, when you look at, some of the things that were conspiracy theories that since have been, proven to be true from, documents leaked from the CIA, right? Like Operation Mockingbird. We have been, so heavily propagandized over the last 50 years where the average American doesn't realize that we had roads in this country before the federal government took response. Like that's something we get so much as a joke as libertarians. Like, who's going to build the roads? Like, go look at a picture of New York City in the late 1800s, right? Like, we would find a way to do all of these things. The problem is you've gotten to the point where total government spending in this country is like between 40 and 50% of GDP. Like 100 years ago, anybody would look at that. And if you look at it just from a metric standpoint, as far as like government spending as a percentage of GDP, that was like a very socialist country in 1924 if you had 40 to 50%
when you talk
spending.
About government spending, you're also talking about government taking.
Yeah, like all of these things that government does, I believe that they can be done privately. Right? Like who would build the roads? Like if the government tomorrow stopped building the roads, who would build the roads just out of necessity?
The same people.
And well, yeah, but let's say the government stopped funding it too. Right? Like all Amazon, Walmart, those companies would think, how the hell do we build these roads so that we can keep this money coming in?
And those companies have done it so many times before, man. If they need a bridge to get into things, if they need a new roadway, they'll build it just to make it accessible. Yeah, to their. No, you're 100% right. Yeah, we've seen
the naming rights, Amazon Bridge, whatever. Yeah.
And they'll put ads on the side of the highway, right? Like if they took over funding of the highway now, every product is
free advertising. Yeah.
We would find ways to do this. Like, there's some people who think that if the government just disappeared tomorrow, that society would collapse. And I just don't believe that.
No.
I believe in the power of humanity. I believe in my neighbors. I believe in the people around me, that if the government stopped doing everything tomorrow, and we see it, maybe it's because I'm from Florida, right? Like I grew up in South Florida and I lived through Hurricane Andrew. And, while the government responds in these cases of natural disaster, and you hear FEMA and all of these things, the reality is most of the work of people taking care of their communities is neighbors helping neighbors. Mm-hmm. Like voluntary interaction, like, oh my gosh, you're my neighbor. Maybe I disagree with you over politics, or, maybe your dog peed in my lawn and it made me upset, but like your house is under what? Like that humanity that comes out in disasters. Part of me thinks, some people would think that, the government ceasing all of its operations would be a disaster. I would say, maybe it would be, but once the people come together and solve things, we'd be in a whole glorious new age.
100%.
So that's part of it. As as a statewide race, there's eyes on us. There was a thing there. My job is to get these ideas out there, because it's not a quick turnaround. It's not like we're going to have one election and all of a sudden we're back to the constitutional republic that our founders thought of.
Yeah.
But if we don't start that message now and work diligently every single day to spread the message and create more little mini spreaders, right? Like I view myself as someone who's spreading the ideas of liberty. My greatest possible accomplishment would be converting everybody that I spread liberty to convert them into someone who's also spreading liberty. Because when we do that, fast forward 10 years, some of these things that we're kind of theorizing about may actually be real. And we might actually be able to pull it off. But if we're not, and we're just sitting around accepting the status quo that the uniparty's ramming down, we'll just have another 10 years of garbage and nonsense to undo when we finally do get enough people to wake up. And I just hope and pray that it's not going to take 100% inflation year over year for a decade to the point where the middle class of our country has been completely destroyed into poverty by the poor decision-making and evil actions of government. So.
Sure. And you have to think about it too, like our grandparents, the greatest generation, right? And our parents, the boomers, they saw development. I mean, the greatest generation also saw the Depression, but, they saw the development of the United States, basically. They saw it go through after World War II, just this huge boom, right? And like we're all over our 40s. So, we remember the 80s and 90s, how they were just awesome, like they were just incredible. So I think it's what, right now we're seeing that the greatest generation is almost gone. The boomers are, they're getting up there pretty good. I mean, they're in their 70s and 80s, and they're going to be passing away within the next 10 years, like you said, probably. So then that leaves Gen X, and I think Gen X had a totally different mindset. Different mindset than our predecessors, right? Like we were kind of more along the lines of like, wait, that doesn't make sense, because they were more along the lines of like, listen, this is how we've always done it. This is how we do it. Yeah. I mean, the government knows. It's also the doctor knows. Everybody knows except for me, right? They're professionals. They know. Whereas the Gen X kind of came up saying like, but hold on, are you sure? We started questioning it. And I know like when I look at my kids, and my kids are like, obviously they're under my house. So they've seen how I kind of take things in and speak about things. They question things. And I've always taught them that. I said, just because it is what it is doesn't mean that it's true. Always question it. Like when my kids are now, all of us, there's 5 of us in the household. I have 3 children. They're all old enough to vote this year for the first time. Okay. And we're all going to go vote together. And they said, I don't know who to vote for. So we'll start researching now. But it's up to you. Like if you decide that Trump aligns with you, I'm not going to question you. It's your decision. It's your right. You shouldn't vote who I vote for because I vote for them. You should make that decision, right? So that's kind of where I raise my kids, like question everything, research it, then you can make an informed decision, right? So with that being said, it's going to take, I think, a little more time. But I love what you're saying. You're basically saying if we keep starting now and each year we do it and we keep pushing it harder and harder and harder, by the time our kids are running the show and their kids are running the show, this may be an entirely different America.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it.
It is. There is no silver bullet or no overnight. Like even fast forward to the low probability scenario, right? Because, I'm not going to get up here, and I've had it with my team where as the next governor of North Carolina, right? Like it could happen. And I'm not going to say, but I'm a realist. I understand probabilities. Sure. But if that happens, right, and enough North Carolinians, and I think the magic number, if we convert it to a three-way race, is going to be somewhere in the 2.3 to 2.5 million, right? If 2.3 to 2.5 million North Carolinians check the box next to my name, even then, I can't pull all of this off as governor. It's not like it would be a snap overnight. What it could do is I could use the power of the pardon to undermine some of the things like the drug war, the gun war, right? All of these things that are there, because we have a pretty limited governor model, right? The governor's not very powerful in the state of North Carolina, though, though Cooper through the COVID era seemed to not care and seem to want to test that. But even getting there, I'm going to do as much change as I could at that level, but it's still not the silver bullet that fixes this. But I'll tell you what it does is it probably shaves a few years off of that timeline. If you get some kind of big shock win like that, and you now have a sitting governor of a state that's saying, hey, take the power into your local communities. If there's something that we're doing here at the state level and your local community says no to this, if you guys want to exercise the 10th Amendment, I will not sick the AG on you. Right. Like that's the kind of thing that we can do, which I think could bring real change to North Carolina in the short term. And we could make our lives of a lot of North Carolinians better, but it's not going to fix the mess of $35 trillion in debt.
No.
But it could be something that takes us from a 20-year time horizon down to a 15-year time horizon.
Dude, Mike, I love it, man. I don't know. Are you familiar with Georgia's Governor Kemp?
Yeah. Vaguely. I mean, a little bit.
So one of the things is when he first ran, I wasn't a huge fan because to me, he felt more like just kind of a good old boy who was going to just keep doing the same conservative thing. And although I find myself, I'm like this, again, I'm a libertarian. So I'm like this weird mix of conservative and liberal, right? Like I'm so the one thing though, is when he got in and COVID hit and what I saw him do completely changed my mind on him as a governor. He basically, because Georgia was one of the only states, probably Florida was another one, that didn't really just shut the world down. Like we kind of shut down for a second because it was just, fear. Like, well, okay, whoa, what is this? And then we slowly kind of got back to it. But he put the power in the local governments. He said, listen, your town, your city, your county. I don't know your county. Make a decision. Should you all wear masks? Should you shut businesses down? And that to me just blew my mind because I was like, I couldn't fathom a governor saying that. He didn't make it. He didn't, throw down the gavel and say, nope, shut it down. He said, I
wasn't familiar he did that, but
it was killer. And
that's
he
what it should have been.
Yeah.
Other than either that or, then that becomes the argument with like, what do you do with the local tyrant, right? Where you now have like a mayor who's saying you can't leave your house kind of thing.
Sure.
Tar but hey, buddy, tar.
But I tell you what though, I think what happened here in Georgia was a lead by example type thing. When Kemp did that, every county, like mayor, every county participant basically went, okay, let's proceed with caution, but let's not shut this down.
Well, I love that approach because then on a local level, if your mayor decides, hey, we're going to keep masking and keep 10 feet away from each other, then you get your local community involved going, yeah, this guy's an idiot.
Exactly. But Travis, great point, because that's the thing is like when you start talking president, it's hard to influence a president from a very small level. But you talk local mayor, we can all show up to the dude's house and be like, cut it out.
Yeah.
And he's going to be influenced, right? So I love the way that he did that.
As mayor, you would say, hey, listen, you do what you want in your household. If you want to mask up and you want to isolate yourself, go right ahead. Yeah. There's no law that's saying you have to mask or you have to social distance. My family, we're going to wear a mask. we're gonna social distance.
Yeah.
That's just what we're gonna do.
Mhm.
And that's what I recommend until we figure this thing out. You go ahead and you do what's best for your family. So as a good mayor, you don't throw down the gavel and say our town is going to mandate this or our county is going to mandate this. You leave it up to each family
I mean,
to
even
decide
business,
what's
right? Even
best for
business.
the
Listen,
family
if you
and
own a
the business.
business, yeah, if you own a
Yeah,
business and you're scared,
the
and that's
trickle down
fine,
effect.
dude,
Yeah.
just shut down for a while.
Yeah.
It's your
If
choice.
you
But
do
for
what
the
you want,
government to come
if
in
you go
and
out of
go,
business because you decide that you're going to require masks, that's on you. I'm not telling you what to do
right.
as a mayor or as a county commissioner. Like I'm not telling you how to live your life
Well,
and
yeah,
how to raise your family.
and your decision's going to, your business is going to be affected by your decision, right? So you have to be wise. I mean, who was
That's
it?
it.
What was it? I can't remember where it was. Was it in North Carolina where the bakery wouldn't do a wedding cake for a gay couple? Is that? Do you remember
Oh,
that?
that was
Colorado.
years ago.
Where
Yeah,
was
that
that?
was years ago. That was
Colorado.
years ago. Yeah, that was
Okay. But
that's
even
like
that
the
though. So think
go-to
about that.
story.
Right,
Yeah,
but no, my point being, think about that. It's the same concept as this, right?
yeah.
How did that affect their business? Greatly. Because then those people posted all that, and everybody who was like, "Oh, dude, I'm not going to do business with people like that. Like that's jacked up,"
Right.
it affected their business. That's how it should be,
Sure.
Right. Exactly.
not the government.
It's their right to serve who they want to serve. If they decide, hey, we're not going to do gay cakes or whatever that
Gay
is,
cakes.
then don't make gay cakes. You know what I'm saying? Don't make cakes for transgender marriages. You know what? If they need to post that on their door, though, we don't make gay cakes. You know what I mean? I guarantee you within a month they're going to go out of business.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
But that's on them. There shouldn't be a law,
there should not be a law. Yeah,
discrimination law saying that you have to serve people.
because
No,
Mike,
you
like you're
don't.
saying, it's the court of public opinion, right? Like the court of public opinion should be the way it goes, because the public's going to say, "Hey, you're
Yeah.
not making gay cakes. We find that jacked up. We're going to tell the community that you don't support the community as a whole, and your business is going to go under."
Well, then it opens up a market for some other company to make
Gay
gay cakes.
cakes, new business,
Yeah.
gay cakes, right?
Homo
We
cakes.
only do gay cakes.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's literally free market solutions.
But yeah, we're kind of getting off topic with the gay cake thing, but the point being is just the
Does a
the
gay
ability.
cake taste different? I don't know.
I doubt it does. I think it's the same sugar and flour as in milk
Gotcha.
as any other cake. But no, I mean, Mike, I love it. I love the fact that you have kind of a long game here. I love that you're a realist. You know that there's always a chance that you might get this. But if anything, you're shaking up the system a little bit, and you're a well-spoken guy. I love your ideals, and man, dude, I truly wish you the best of luck in this, man, because I'm not in North Carolina, but man, if you can get it there, it's a trickle down, dude. I'm not too far. I'm here in Georgia.
Man, if it happens, whether it's through this election for governor or if it's a small town somewhere anywhere in this country, once you have libertarian governance, and this is something I truly believe, at whatever level we can get it, once you have that, and we truly lean into libertarian principles as kind of the North Star for how we govern whatever geographical area we can, get electoral power over, right? It's going to spread like cancer. Because if you have one little town that's like, hey, we're going to deregulate and strip off the taxes and make this the most business-friendly municipality in the state, what's going to happen to the people who are right on the outskirts of that county? They're going to move, right? Like, hey, if I move a mile down the road, I'm going to cut my tax bill in half.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Who's not going to, like, once that happens and people see that it results, because that's the biggest knock that libertarians have had from the Uniparty in so long, right? Oh, well, when did you libertarians actually make this work? Like, sometimes if you never get an opportunity to hit a golf ball, right? Like you don't know how hard you can hit. But I'll tell you what, if you practice form for 10,000 hours and you're taking the swings, you know what? I trust that kid to go out there and hit that golf ball, and he's probably going to crush it.
Sure.
Right? And they're kind of holding down libertarians. And that's why I think I'm very, very much keeping a very close eye on Argentina. Because you have essentially what I would argue is one of the most radical flavors of libertarian in Javier Milei, an open anarcho-capitalist, right? And he's the president of a big country.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right? And fast forward 10 years. I mean, his initial few months have already given me so much hope and validity to our ideas that we've been theorizing about for all this time. But, you fast forward 5-10 years and you see real results. I think that only helps the liberty movement. And I think it's something that will continue to drive eyeballs and ears towards the LP, towards libertarianism as an idea, and towards the broader liberty movement. And I think that the end result of that is all positive for those of us who believe in freedom and liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's kind of like gaining power just so you can abolish power. And that's really the libertarian mindset is, it's like that meme, we're slowly trying to take over the world so that we can leave everybody alone.
Yep.
It's the same thing. You've got the power to basically abolish power. And when you don't have a huge ego and you're not a power-hungry maniac, you can relinquish power back to the people.
Yeah.
And you have the power to relinquish the power. And that's really libertarianism.
Yeah.
Is giving 100%. The power back to the people to decide what's best for them. And you're able to orchestrate that. And that's really why libertarians need to get elected. So I have a question.
Yeah, man.
Post-election, let's say you do not win. Let's just say for some reason you do not win.
Okay. Expected outcome. Right? Yep. So the expected outcome based on a probability basis.
I'm not saying that.
I'll say that. From a probability standpoint, that is absolutely the expected outcome. But okay, so that happens.
The day after election.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What's on the game plan? Are you going to remain an activist? What's your deal? What's your mindset post-election?
Post-election, right? Like, hopefully we'll be celebrating some wins, right? Because that's one thing that I don't take lightly. As the gubernatorial candidate in North Carolina, we have about 50 libertarians running across this state. So while I think that my chances, at least from a raw probability standpoint, are probably the lowest, I think we have some libertarians who have a good shot at winning, right? So my between now and the election, obviously, how can I help them do that? Right after that is I want to meet with our candidates who win, right? And say, how can we do this? Because to take this on, right, in the long run, I'm thinking in terms of decades already, as far as what it's going to take to move here and move the needle towards liberty. So if we've got some candidates who win on the town council or whatever they're running for, the question doesn't, my role doesn't really change at that point. Win or lose, I've accidentally stepped myself into being a microphone for these ideas, right? So it then becomes, okay, we got some wins. Even if I don't win the governor race, how do we highlight these candidates so that when they're taking over and bringing libertarian ideas to their communities and bringing about real change, it's just like I talked about, spreading like a cancer. How do we make sure that in 2 years when we have more municipal elections or the next year, like how do we get that from, hey, we've got, 10 libertarians elected, how do we get it to 20? How do we get it to 40? How do we get it to 100? Like that's what it's going to take. So being able to go around and work with the candidates that are now taking in and stepping into their roles in governance, how do we take what they're doing in their communities of implementing libertarian solutions? How do we give that a megaphone, right? Because if they're in a small town, maybe things are changing for their small town for the better. But if everyone else in the state doesn't know about it, it's not really helping towards that goal. So if I can come out of this as a mouthpiece and we're taking all of these local wins and we're now saying, okay, well, let's have the megaphone for the 2024 gubernatorial campaign, continuing to put this out to all of the people that align with these ideas, where they look at it and say, wow, maybe that inspires next year. somebody who was a supporter of my campaign who came here who says, wow, Mike now highlighted that we've got a new mayor in this town and they're doing these and leading in this way. Maybe we now have someone who's willing to run for office in 2025. Like there's so many ways we can come out of this. So, I mean, that's kind of the other big goal is if I don't win the governor's race, how do I take all of the data, all of the connections, all of the people? How do we pull them in, right? Because what I'm talking about is truly like a peaceful, decentralized revolution. I can't do it by myself. The only way I'm going to do this is if we can pull all of these people where instead of being on the sidelines and just coming in and voting, how do we turn them into, multipliers, force multipliers, where in 2025 we may jump from 10, and keep growing so that, in 2035, we might have a real shot at the governor's race where we come in and they're looking at it from day one and saying, wow, this is a three-way race. Mm-hmm. Is this going to be the year that but if we don't set that groundwork, right? I think our record is what? Travis, you've been with the party in North Carolina a lot longer than me. I think is a record somewhere in like the 3% range-ish or something for the governor race. Yeah, I mean, it's so, obviously that's a goal, right? Is mm-hmm. set the record for percentage of the vote that we can get in the state. Like there's a lot of smaller wins that we're trying to line up that are much more manageable, attainable, and specifically that, the odds are kind of can be shifted in our favor. I don't know if we can ever get to the point where we can shift the odds in our favor for winning it. Maybe we can. But it'd be one of those things that I think if I win, it would certainly be a shock. And to me, that's actually almost more powerful because I think if we fast forward to 2035 and they're like, hey, the libertarians are in this, it's not a shock when they win. So in my opinion, it's less of a mandate. Like if you really think through what it means, right? They're spending the most money in any state for our governor's race. If enough people check that box and I somehow win it, despite the fact that I'm refusing to spend money with the newspapers, the social media, like I'm not playing into their game because it's a fool's errand and it's a waste of money. I'd rather see that money go to charities that are actually doing some good in the world than lining the pockets of Meta and these mega corporations. But if I somehow pull this off, to me, that's a mandate from the people of this state, really, for my platform, because it's not me, right? Like they're getting behind the platform, the things that I am advocating for, the problems with the system in this state that I'm pointing out that are harmful to them. So I think on day one, it really comes down to, give me bills for everything in my platform. And if you don't, 2 years from now, I will have libertarians running on my platform against you in all of your districts. And I will spend the whole time talking about how despite the fact that you shocked the world and elected this libertarian, every Republican and every Democrat is spitting in your face, doesn't think what you want matters. You do that, you can create real pressure. And I think that when everybody said that was going to be the problem that Javier Milei ran into, right? Oh, he's just the executive. He doesn't have the Congress. It's a new party. It's all of this. He'll never be able to do it. When you shock the system that much, it's a mandate, and I think it strikes fear into the hearts of all of those who are happy just clinging on to power.
Oh, for sure.
So if I do pull it off, I think it's a mandate where I can really on day one say, look, you deliver everything that the people voted for, or you are spitting in the face of the people of North Carolina. Throw it in their court, and if they don't want to play ball, you just spend 2 years being a megaphone and making sure that the entire Uniparty party gets replaced at that point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's what's nuts is I think, like you're saying, if one person gets in somewhere in this country in a big role, right? Governor, let's say governor. If one of these states can get a libertarian governor, I think you see a snowball effect, right? The second that the population can look and go, what's happening in North Carolina? Like, wait, that sounds awesome. How do we do that? Well, it's this other party. Holy shit. Okay. And then they start going that route. And I'm with you, man. I mean, again, this long game, but it's the second it's like what happened in Colorado with the legalization of marijuana, right?
Yeah.
Like they pulled it off and other states were like, okay, we watched it for a while. That wasn't that bad. Okay, let's try it. It's the same concept, man. Wow.
So Mike,
well, look where we are now. I mean, people don't realize this. And I was on another podcast, in 2018, Trump accidentally legalized weed across the country anyway. Like, people aren't realizing it, but The 2018 Farm Bill, they found loop arounds where in every state in this country, they're selling it as hemp, but it's basically non-taxed weed. They just, and to me, I don't think that would have happened without the Colorado and everything moving in that direction, setting the groundwork. It's a long game. That's the sad reality of politics. It's a long game. And sadly, I think that if you don't start strategizing and planning and putting in place a long game strategy, you're never going to even be there on the field when the long game is actually finished. And I think that's one of the big problems, that everybody wants political change now. And I get it. Like, I understand that urge. Like, 35 trillion in debt, $100 billion at a time being like spying on Americans without a warrant. But the sad reality is, it took 100 years to build this system, right? Like, from when they put the Federal Reserve in place, and then like the various things that happened along the way, like in 71 when they pull us off the gold standard. These things take time periods of decades. And if we're not coming up with how can we make it so that in a decade our efforts are amplifying that, I think that's one of the big problems with a lot of political movements. And you see it fizzle out with so many, whether it was Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party. Like, you saw these movements that built where they were built on this kind of like frustration with things now, and they were demanding immediate change. And, whether they got co-opted, whether they got stomped out, I feel like they weren't really playing the long game. And I think that's the challenge, because I think if they were playing the long game, we might have seen some positive movement that libertarians could have gotten behind coming from both of those movements, even though they are supposedly on opposite sides of the left-right paradigm. I think there were things that most libertarians can probably look at both of those movements and say, hey, we could have got behind that. And I for one, view it as a missed opportunity that they got co-opted so quickly. And you see a lot of the Occupy movement that came out, where it's like, when COVID hit, the same people who were like, down with all the big banks and down with Raytheon, like, those companies, virtue signal with their vax policy, and the same people who were trying to shut them down a decade before are cheering them on, right? Like, that's my challenge. Like, that's my problem with a lot of the movements that I think that libertarians maybe could have got a little excited about, was they were just not playing the long game. And if we don't start playing the long game, we're never going to win in the long run.
So, Mike, how can people view your platform? How can our listeners view your platform? Where can they go to find out more about you, donate? Where can they go for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking and letting me go into the plug, Groo. So if you like what you're hearing, about my candidacy, head over to my campaign site. It's firetheuniparty.com, UNIPARTY. And if you can donate, right now, the News, in collaboration with the Uniparty, has decided that they don't want me to speak to Mark Robinson and Josh Stein in this debate. So they put a limit where I have to raise $1 million by June 30th to be able to participate. My campaign had no intention of spending $1 million, as I hopefully, got across earlier here. So if you will help me, whether it's a dollar or $6,400, the limit, if you want to hear this message and these ideas presented in the debate stage, that's what we have to do to make it happen. I told you, if we do raise this $1 million, I'm not going to suddenly change and start buying TV commercials and playing their game. I'll probably find liberty-focused charities and try to do some good in the world out of a political campaign. But if you could help, that's where we're sitting. They're trying to lock us out of the debate, trying to prevent the people of North Carolina from hearing these ideas. But if we can get to $1 million, they're going to have to deal with me. And there is already a debate of me debating our sitting state treasurer and a retired Supreme Court justice who were the number 2 Republican and number 2 Democrat. And I won the straw poll there. So I really don't think Robinson and Stein want to have to debate me. But if the people of North Carolina or the rest of this country can help get us to that $1 million, I promise that I'll present these ideas in a reasonable, rational way that will stump both Robinson and Stein and get these ideas out there. So thank you. And it's firetheuniparty.com.
Awesome.
Firetheuniparty.com, the best website domain of all time.
Ever. Can't believe it was available.
Cheap
Mike,
too, right?
Yeah. Mike, thanks so much, man. Like, we've enjoyed talking to you, and really, Travis, we both wish you the best of luck, because somebody like you helping run a state is what we need to change America, and America needs to wake up and realize that. So thank you for coming on, Mike.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a wonderful day, and happy to come back anytime.
Awesome. Take care.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye, guys.
Created by human